Welcome to Bow Build Day 2. If you missed the first episode, I have already adjusted my draw length, adjusted my let off, adjusted the draw weight, and realized my cam timing is off. You can see that top stop there is nearly touching, but down here on our bottom cam, there's still quite a bit of space between that stop and the cable. So let's have some more fun, shall we? In order to twist the cable, I need to press my bow. And with this particular bow press, you need to make sure that the fingers are all the way loosened before you get the bow in. Once you have a little pressure on the bow, then you can tighten those fingers down before finishing pressing all the way. During my first couple bow builds, I was so nervous to press my bow, but it's one of those things that the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it. And I've realized that you really don't need to press it that hard in order to work on it. Here's another trick. As you're pressing the bow, you want to keep tension on the string and pull up as you press. And I realized I needed to press it down just a little bit more. I needed enough slack to get this cable off my cam. Since the top cam was touching before the bottom cam, I need to add a twist to the downward cable. And in order to figure out which cable is down and which cable is up, it's really easy. You just draw your bow and pay attention to which cable goes down and which cable goes up. I used a pair of needle nose pliers to help me get the cable off of the cam, which worked really, really well. Added some twists, put it back on. And if you're unsure how to do this, definitely take photos or videos of the cams before you start messing with it, just so you can make sure that everything goes on exactly as it was. Now it's time to tie my knock set. I'm using a handy dandy bow square, which I have lined up with the burger button on my riser. So the bottom of the holes of the burger buttons are lined up perfectly with the bow square, and I'm tying my knock set in line with the bottom of the bow square. I hope that makes sense. Then I'm using some serving material to tie on my knock set. I'm only tying one on the bottom side of the knock with shorter axle to axle bows. Some people like to tie two knock sets in order to avoid knock pinch, but with this bow being a 31-inch ATA, I felt good with one knock set. Next comes my D-loop. So I'm using some D-loop material and a pair of needle nose pliers to get this together. Keep in mind that as you're tying your D-loop, you need to make it a lot smaller than you think you want it, because this material will stretch as you shoot. And that can end up affecting the overall draw length and how this bow fits your particular form in your body. So keep that in mind. I like to fluff out the ends before I burn them down because I feel like it makes a more secured knot. Cam timing is on, D-loop is set, knock set is set. It's time to set up the arrow rest. I've pretty much always used a drop away rest. My very first bow had a whisker biscuit. My very first bow was actually a Hoyt Ignite, and I had that bow for about a season before I bought another. And it was the perfect little bow to start with. LOL that this comes with a CD. Take that screw out. I'm gonna take the washer off of that, put that washer on this longer screw. There's that little spacer, adding it on right there. That spacer will give us a little more distance, just like that. Okay. Now we'll mount this. Ooh, yeah. Now I'm putting my bow back in the press in order to release the tension on the cable so that I can tie the rest in. I've got this nice little tool that separates the strings to give me some space to wrap this cord around and around. I wrap it around about 3 times before releasing that tension and taking the bow out of the press. I'll finish tying in this rest as I tune my bow. Now it's time to tie in my peep. I was working on my bow with the garage door open during a Florida thunderstorm. I'm using that same little tool to split the string and place my peep approximately where I want it to go. My beautiful bow is in the vise. You can barely see it because of all the crap that I have in my garage, but this little guy is what we care about. So this goes right on my string like that. It's very secure. And then by adjusting the vise, I can make sure that my bow is perfectly level. Right now it looks like it's riding a little bit forward. So let me go ahead and adjust this guy. We're perfectly level here and perfectly level here. So now let me grab an arrow, take an arrow, pop her in, take this little guy, pop it right on my arrow, pulling the rest so that it is acting as if my rest is at full draw. And it looks like it is just ever so slightly knock high. The bubble is not quite centered, so I'm going to raise my rest just slightly to get it centered. There's a screw I loosen on this side, and then I'll be able to move the rest up and down. Go. Okay. The tiniest little adjustment. Just to double check, the bow's level. Now looking at that arrow, oh yeah, that looks perfect. And just a side note, I am tugging down on my rest to imitate what my rest will be doing at full draw. It does raise the arrow up just slightly, so it's important to remember to do that as you're checking to see if the arrow is balanced, or level rather. Now to make sure that the arrow is in the center here, I need to measure from the riser to the center of the arrow to be 13/16. So you might not see this great on camera, but you'll get an idea of what I'm trying to accomplish here. The arrow's not quite in the center. I need to move it out just a little bit. So we loosen this guy right here, shimmy it out. It's pretty darn close to where we want it to be. I'll be able to do some more fine tuning whenever I paper tune. Woohoo! Referencing my notes. Center of the arrow, measuring 13/16 check. Yeah. I have to make sure that my peep is at the right height, is in the right place, basically. And the only way to do this is to draw the bow back and take a look. This part always makes me a little nervous because the peep sight is not tied in yet, and there's always a chance that it could go flying. So I got handy dandy eye protection. Hopefully this doesn't mess up. Hopefully this doesn't mess it up. I'm gonna draw this way because I don't want the neighbors to think that I'm weird. Really, you should always have an arrow in the bow because you don't want to dry fire it. Woo. That 90% let off. Boy, peep needs to come up. Needs to come up pretty significantly. So to the press we go. It's like twisting a little bit. So I'm trying to get it to go back to the way that it needs to be, so we shall see. Ooh, I really don't know that if I liked that let off. I might need to reduce the let off. It does feel so good at full draw though, so maybe not. Yeah, it's gotta come down. I just pushed that down with my fingers, so I'm gonna go again. Lower. It's honestly embarrassing that 45 pounds is like kind of a lot. Oh, wow. Oh, boy. I noticed the housing around my scope housing, this is a little too big. She's a little too prominent. I'm gonna need to switch that to a smaller one because of the size of the peep. So I'll want my scope housing to match that, but it's looking good. I'm sweating, can you, oh, sweating. Since this is a really easy change, before I tie that peep in, I'm going to go ahead and make this a little smaller, just so I can get a better idea if I'm really matching my peep sight with the housing. So I think this one, let me show you the difference. This is the size that was on there, and this is the size I'm changing to. So I'm changing to a smaller scope housing, or scope ring, I don't know. what the correct terminology would be. But this is going to fit my peep sight perfectly. So when I'm at full draw, I'm lining up the outside of my peep with the outside of my sight, and it will fit perfectly. If I had trouble seeing in low light conditions, it would be good to go with a larger sized peep and the larger circle around my scope, but this setup should be good. So, all right, let's draw it one more time. This is kind of exciting. Eyes closed. Okay. Dude. Yep. Ooh. Magnificent. I love when it works. I need to check that the second and third axis on my bow's sight are level. So first thing, got my handy dandy level here. I'm gonna move the vise until my bow is perfectly level. Ooh, she look good. This guy is perfectly level, but we zoom on up here, you can see that the level on my sight is not perfectly centered, which means that my second axis is off. You guys, I just noticed something. When I take this guy and I put it on the string, I get a different reading than when I put it on the serving. So which one is right? I need to Google this. Okay, I quickly watched an October Mountain product video for the level, and they were putting it on the serving of the string. So that would be right here, which means that my rest and everything that I've already done may be off. This is one of the joys of doing this kind of stuff at home. So let me re-level based on that information. Looks like my arrow could use to come, or it looks like my rest could use to come up a little bit more. Also, this is looking too tight, way too tight. See that bubble moving? Now I can get that bubble perfectly level with the level that's on my bowstring. Okay, this is not a very cool angle. Now it's time to adjust the third axis on my sight. So with the bow tilted forward like this, I have a level on the riser nearly centered, but you can see how the bubble on my sight is not anywhere close to centered, which means that my third axis is off, so I'm gonna adjust that. With my third axis set, I'm moving on to tying in my peep sight. Now that I have it exactly where I want it to be, I want to make sure that it does not move and it stays secure while I'm shooting my bow. It is time to paper tune. I want to give you a little update on the rest. So I did not burn off this cord that I've used to tie in my rest, and I don't want to do that until after I paper tune, just in case I have to move the rest so much that this is no longer in the right place. So I've just put a little knot in it for now. I'll paper tune, do my thing, and then double check that the rest is exactly where I want it before I burn off that little end and finish tying her in. I know that these arrows are too heavy for the poundage that this bow is at currently. This bow is at 45 pounds and my arrows are at 360 without a field tip, 460 with a field tip. I should probably be shooting around 55 pounds, not 45 pounds. So we'll see what happens when I shoot these arrows. I may need to mess around with some things. I think my spine is correct, but we'll see. We'll see how paper tuning goes, but I may need to fudge around with some things. 51.50. Well, hello. Welcome to my paper tuning shop. Let me show you what I have. I don't have an official paper tuning setup, so this is what's going on. I look like I look like such a dope right now. Whatever. Come here. So here I have not a garbage can. This is actually my yard waste bin, so I'm not smelling stinky garbage the whole time that I'm doing this. My itsy bitsy teeny weeny target. I really want to buy one of those giant foam targets. That's on my list. Then I have these two tripods. These are actually for lighting equipment, for like photography and videography. I use them in my videos sometimes. I'm using those to secure the paper to. Let me show you the paper. I have this lovely roll of paper and some duct tape. So let's give this a try, shall we? Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, now let's just make sure that, oh, nope. No. Basically what I was checking is that the arrow has enough space to pass all the way through the paper before it hits the target, you know? If the target was too close, the whole arrow wouldn't go through, and then I wouldn't see where the fletchings are hitting in comparison to the tip. So, let's shoot this thing. I'm a little bit in the palmetto when I shoot this, so I did increase my poundage a little bit, so we'll see how this shoots. Oh, maybe I increased it a little too much, girl. Okay. Ooh, that's a tear. That's a tear. Take a sneaky peeky. All right, class, can you tell me what type of tear this is? This is a right tear, slightly high, but it's a right tear. So the tip went in right here, and then the fletchings or the back of the arrow came through to the right, which means I need to move my rest to the left. For right and left tears, you follow the tear, and for up and down tears, you do the opposite, which is very confusing. So reference your notes, reference your archery notebook when you're doing this kind of stuff. So let me move that rest and try again. Just use this little guy, loosened the screw, shifted my rest, tighten it back down. Need to move it more. I think we got it, boys and girls. It took me a minute. I had to shoot it quite a few times and just inch it closer and closer, but I think that one was my last shot, and I did kind of push it forward so I could really see. I think they're looking really good. Okie doke. So now that I know that my rest isn't going to move, I need to finish burning off this little end to complete the rest. That's all good. Let's unbox these bad boys. Ooh, I'm excited about these. All right, let's start here. Oh, that is beautiful. Check out these stabilizers. So there's yellow on it right now, but I can customize that color if I want. So I threw on the stabilizer. This Hitman is actually a dual stabilizer, so it has a bracket that I can have the 10-inch on the front, 8-inch coming off the back. I'm probably not going to hunt like that, although I am excited to play around with it. But for now, I have a 10-inch stabilizer on the front, and then I installed this quiver, which looks awesome. Check out the lights. So now, all that's left to do is sight in my Tommy Hawk sight. I'm going to do that off camera or maybe in a separate video, but here we have the Bear Escalate bow build complete. So that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.